I didn't say a word when the HOA president stood there in her sun visor, jabbing her finger toward the private road. No access sign they had just planted across my driveway. I just handed her the rolled-up copy of the county easement record and waited. Her mouth opened, then closed again when she saw the official seal. Her lawyer, a local guy who'd probably never been embarrassed in public before, took one look, turned pale, and quietly folded the document back up. The silence that followed was better than any argument I could have won, because at that point, they finally realized the very driveway they tried to block wasn't theirs to control. It never had been. I moved out here for peace. I'd spent 25 years working in logistics. Long hours, constant deadlines, and the kind of quiet exhaustion that creeps up on you only when you stop. My wife and I wanted somewhere we could breathe, somewhere the air didn't hum with traffic or fluorescent light. We found a small property at the edge of a pine-covered development, about 2 acres, with a narrow asphalt strip leading down from the main road to our garage. It wasn't much, but it was clean, quiet, and honest. I remember thinking, the first morning we woke up there, that I could finally hear my own thoughts. Our driveway cut through a section that connected directly to the county-maintained road. The realtor had explained that the access was grandfathered in, part of an old farm easement long before the HOA existed. I didn't think much of it. The house had belonged to an older couple before us, and they'd clearly lived in peace for decades. The HOA dues were small, and I figured as long as I kept my yard clean and didn't paint the house lime green, we'd never have to deal with them. For the first year, that assumption held true. Then came the letters. The first one was almost polite. A note citing a question of boundary use and requesting I attend a community compliance review. I didn't even know what that meant. When I showed up, the board told me my driveway technically crossed HOA common property and that they were considering restricting access for safety. I laughed, thinking it was a misunderstanding. This driveway's been here since the 1960s, I said. The county records still show it as a legal easement. They nodded like they understood, but I saw the way. One board member whispered to another. A few weeks later, I found the first sign. Private road. Oh. Uze only hammered right next to my mailbox. Then another, closer to the end of the asphalt, blocking entry from the main road. It was surreal. Cars slowed down just to stare. Delivery drivers got confused and started leaving packages at the corner. My wife, embarrassed, started parking on the street just to avoid confrontation. When I asked the HOA president why they'd done it, she said, "We have to protect community property. You can apply for an access permit." A permit to use my own driveway. I tried being civil. I wrote emails, quoted from the easement clause in our deed, and even attached a scan of the original county plat. I asked for a meeting with their attorney to review the documentation. They ignored every message for a month. 10 sent me a notice of noncompliance, threatening daily fines until I stopped trespassing on my own access road. That was the day I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was control. They thought if they made it inconvenient enough, I'd give up and reroute my driveway, something that would cost me tens of thousands. So I did what I do best. I went to the records. The county land office is one of those places that smells like dust and old tuna. I spent 2 days there, combing through surveyor records, easement plots, and deed transfers, going all the way back to 1948. What I found was better than gold. The easement wasn't just valid, it was protected under county code as a permanent ingress. Egress right-of-way tied to the original parcel number. It had been reaffirmed twice, once in 1972 when the property was split, and again in 1998 when the subdivision was formed. The HOA's land description explicitly excluded that strip of asphalt. In other words, they never owned it, never had authority over it, and couldn't legally block it. I kept digging. I learned that the HOA's founding plat was filed incorrectly. They dereferenced the wrong boundary marker for the east edge, which meant their common area technically overlapped county right-of-way by about 12 feet. It explained why the utilities had always run awkwardly across the edge of their private property. The kicker, the county's own infrastructure maintenance crew had repaved that stretch just 3 years earlier using public funds, meaning if the HOA's signs stayed up, they were in violation of county transportation code, obstructing a public easement. That weekend, I walked the boundary line myself. I photographed everything. The signs, the survey stakes, the paint marks on the asphalt. My wife thought They lost my mind. I told her not to worry, but I knew the stress was getting to her. Neighbors stopped waving. Some whispered that I was suing the HOA. I wasn't. Not yet, but you could feel the isolation setting in. Still, I couldn't let it go. I'd worked too hard for that sense of peace, to let a few petty board members bully it out of me. I filed a quiet complaint with the county code enforcement office, attaching every document I'd gathered. It took about 2 weeks before I got a call from a planning inspector named Robert. His tone was half amused, half exasperated. "Yeah," he said, "they can't do that. That road's under a perpetual right-of-way clause. Been that way since before the HOA was even incorporated." I asked him if he could send something in writing. He emailed me the official easement confirmation, complete with a county seal and a note. "Any obstruction of this access constitutes a violation under Section 42 to 217 of County Transportation Code." I printed 3 copies. The next HOA board meeting was held in their usual spot, the clubhouse by the pool, where they like to sit in their folding chairs and pretend they were running a government. I showed up with a folder and said nothing. The president, a woman named Carol, started in immediately. "You're not authorized to park or drive over HOA property," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "If you continue, we'll be forced to pursue legal action." That was my cue. I slid the document across the table. "You might want to read this first." The room went silent, except for the hum of the ceiling fan. The lawyer leaned over, adjusted his glasses, and his expression shifted from confidence to confusion to dread. This is from the county?" he asked, quietly. "Yes," I said. "That's the official easement record, verified and sealed last week. You've been posting signs on county-maintained property, and according to Section 42 to 217, that's a finnable offense." You could almost hear the gears grinding in Carol's head as she realized what that meant. They hadn't just overstepped. They'd broken the law. They'd been so eager to threaten me with. I didn't need to yell. I didn't even need to smile. I just collected my copy and stood up. "I'd suggest you remove those signs before the county does," I said, and walked out. Within 48 hours, the signs were gone, the posts yanked out, holes filled, grass receded like nothing had happened. Week later, the county inspector sent me a brief update. The HOA had been formally cautioned for unauthorized modification of a public access point. In bureaucratic terms, that's as close to humiliation as it gets. The next newsletter the HOA sent out didn't mention me by name, but the tone was very different, full of clarifications about ongoing boundary reviews and commitments to transparency. Carol resigned. 2 months later, the lawyers stopped attending meetings altogether. The new president, a quiet guy who lives 2 doors down, dropped by one evening to clear the air. He said he appreciated my patience and that the board wanted to move forward, positively. I told him that was fine as long as they remembered where the property lines actually are. Now, when I drive down that same strip of asphalt every morning, the only signs that remain are the original street markers, the ones the county installed decades ago. Neighbors who used to avoid me now give a half wave, or at least look away politely. I don't hold grudges. I just remember. The road is smooth, the house is quiet, and the only sound in the evenings is the wind in the pines. The same reason we moved here in the first place. Funny thing about power, the people who think they have it, usually don't understand the paper it's built on. And in Micah's, one piece of paper, stamped, sealed, and archived in a dusty county basement, was all it took to remind them. Now, they stay on their side of the line, and that's exactly how I like it.